Let's get into this week's Q&A. Again, thank you to everybody for getting their questions in on last week's video. If you have questions for next week's Q&A, please put them in the comments here. Ask me anything. Until then, let's get into it. Okay, I've considered doing a couple of videos about how to make guitar videos, but I figured no one would be that interested. But seeing as somebody has now asked, I'll go through the basics of how I'm making this video at least, and then how I make all my other demo videos. So in order to do that, I guess the most important thing is the camera. And it's really hard to film your camera with your camera, so here's my little GoPro, and as you can see, I've got a Canon EOS 5D Mark III, and using the Canon zoom lens. This is a 24 to 70mm. It's got an f-stop of 2.8 or something like that, so it's the one with the good f-stop. And then I've basically just got some lights. I should say as well that this camera is actually my wife's camera, so and I probably owe all of this to her because she's the one that encouraged me to go ahead and make better videos. So yeah, until she confiscates this, if I get too obsessed with these, I guess I'm going to be using this. But I've been looking at getting another body and a couple of other things just to do multi-angle things. You can see right up my nose with the GoPro now too. So there's that, and then I've got, again, this is my wife's handiwork. She got me these for Christmas, which are like the best investment ever. They're just some lights, and they make a huge difference. Having good lighting, I think, is the difference between my older videos and these videos now, because you can actually see stuff and it's not super grainy and all those things that go along with that. And then, as you can see, I've got my guitars and amps and a bunch of other stuff kind of just sitting around within striking distance, so that when it comes to writing and when it comes to demoing stuff and then doing gear demos, all the stuff I need really quickly is very close. And then, as you can see here on my desk, this is such a handy little thing, basically the remote control for the Canon, which means that I can basically set the camera up over here, I can hit this, and then I can take a photo to focus the camera, and then I can hit record and I don't have to move. So that is a huge workflow thing. And then on the desk, I've got a tuner here, that's really handy. I've got this Behringer Pro 8 Digital, it's basically an ADAT, and then that is hooked up to my Apollo Twin, as you can see here. And then I'm also using the Axe FX3, so a lot of the Axe FX3 demos are just the Axe straight into the computer via USB. Nearly everything else I just go through the Apollo because it makes my workflow a little bit easier. Got these Atom A7X monitors, which sound fantastic, or maybe they don't sound at all. They don't have a huge amount of coloration and they make dialing in tones really easy. And then for editing stuff, I'm using Pro Tools to record all the audio, and then I'm using Final Cut basically to chop stuff up, and I'm constantly learning new things with Final Cut, which is a very, very dense program. So hopefully you guys have noticed the improvement in video production, and I'm hoping to improve the videos constantly as I learn new things in Final Cut and learn new things about audio and get new gear. So that's basically how I make my videos, and yeah, I'm really glad that you like them, and I hope that helps you out if you want to go and make your own videos. Basically, you know, invest in the best camera and the best lens that you can afford, and get some lights, and everything else should take care of itself. So I haven't played an Aristides, but I have played a Strandberg. I played one when I was in Japan recently, and I was blown away with it. I really liked how the neck has that flat spot on the back of the neck that kind of follows the contour of your hand while you're playing. So I was very impressed with the Strandberg stuff, and I would love to try an Aristides. It just sounds like the ultimate solution for touring, because it's not going to warp, it's not going to do any of these things. It just sounds like the kind of guitar you could literally just put in a gig bag and check it onto the plane and not have to worry about it. So I would love to try one of those out one day, and that's probably high up on the gas list of new things to try. The Strandberg stuff's great, but yeah, the Aristides stuff looks really appealing from a touring point of view. What's the gem-like guitar? Well, it could be one of several guitars. There's this one, which is a Hamer Californian. This was actually painted by Perry Ormsby from Ormsby Guitars. Before I bought it, I saw it hanging up in a music store, and I like Hamer guitars and I like this kind of graphics, so I bought it. So there's that one, and then there's this, the mighty RG550. This one is from 1990, I believe. I've changed the pickups. I really need to set this thing up, but yeah, that's the ultimate color, desert yellow for me. I'm a very, very big fan of Porcupine Tree. They're one of my favorite bands. In Absentia is one of my favorite albums ever, and I really like Opeth as well. I'm a big fan of their newer stuff, which I know polarizes a lot of people, but I thought Heritage, I thought was a really good album. When I heard that, I was like, man, this is way more my vibe with the old kind of prog stuff. So big fan of that. I remember hearing Opeth probably when I was in high school, hearing Blackwater Park and just being blown away by how heavy it was, but it also how organic everything sounded. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Opeth, and the current lineup and what they're doing is, in my opinion, really great. And I like all the old stuff. I saw them live 6 or 7 years ago maybe in Australia, and I remember watching them and thinking, wow, this is a band that is like really at their peak. And they just played amazing, and Michael is a very, very funny man. I won't even try to replicate the joke, but you know, he did this thing where he goes, okay, cool, everybody's got to guess the riff, and then he plays this riff, and of course no one knew, and he goes, that's King Diamond, let's try another one, and then he played the same riff, and of course everybody shouted King Diamond. So yeah, he's a massive music nerd, and I appreciate that. And as for Steven Wilson's stuff, I really like his solo stuff, in particular Insurgentes and the whole movie that went with it. There's a couple of tracks on there that really, really do it for me, but I think In Absentia is peak. And I haven't listened to his new solo album a whole lot. I just love the mindset of a lot of like progressive music fans, sort of like Steven going, okay, cool, I'm going to do something that's unexpected and a development in my career. People are like, oh dude, you know, this doesn't have Mellotron and this doesn't sound like that and this isn't progressive, this is pop. So I like how he's almost like trolling his core audience there, which is kind of cool. You know, I got a lot of respect for the guy, and I got a lot of respect for the guy for changing his mind about something like Spotify as well. I know he hates the MP3 thing, and then I read his thing about Spotify and I was like, here we go, this guy's gonna, you know, crap all over it. And yeah, his views on something like Spotify are very similar to my own. So yeah, cool guy. I'd love to meet him one day and just like shake his hand and say, you're doing it right. What gauge strings do I use? I'll show you the exact strings that I use on nearly all of my guitars that I use in videos. So for pretty much everything, whether it's standard tune stuff on a Strat or a Tele, or it's drop C stuff on my short scale guitars, I just use these. Elixir 10 to 52s, these are the Nano Webs. I really like the way they feel, I really like the way they sound, they kind of last forever, and I basically don't change strings until I break a string with them. So yeah, Elixir Nano Webs. I know there's, you know, a whole rabbit hole to go down with string types and people talk about it a lot, but I don't really care. I'm used to the way these sound. And if I can't get these, I just use the orange Ernie Ball ones, the 10 to 52s. So I like these slightly more because the D string's like 32 gauge or something, so it's slightly heavier, it feels slightly better to me. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks this, that Randy Rhoads' tone on the Aussie albums that he recorded anyway is pretty terrible, but I think it's a good discussion to have about tone because Randy was such an amazing player and such an innovative player that it doesn't matter. Like, his guitar sounded like a swarm of bees trapped in a jar, but he was playing so well that really, does anybody care? Because everybody's first metal riff is like Crazy Train, and everybody wants to learn his solos, and his style is so hard to replicate that it sort of goes to show that we spend all this time chasing this white rabbit of tone when really it doesn't matter. What we should be doing is focusing on being creative and focusing on creating music and focusing on practicing guitar, because Randy was a big proponent of practicing guitar. So yeah, even if you think his tone sucked, and I have to say on the tribute album, his tone's way better, so it's probably more a case of the actual production sucking than his guitar tone. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the way, especially Blizzard of Oz, sounds as an album, but I think the songs are great, and I think his playing's amazing. His live playing's just off the wall and so inspiring to listen to. Dimebag's another guy as well, who I guess you would say on its own, he's got a bad guitar tone, whatever that means. You know, it's not your the Gear Page approved kind of tone, but you know, Pantera was such an amazing band, and Dime was such an amazing and an innovative player again, that that sound is so linked to that style that it's like integral about it. When you think of Pantera, you think of that like crushing mid-scoop, way over distorted sound, and you know, if he wasn't sort of ballsy enough to go, nah, this is my guitar sound and it's got character and it's kind of a bit stanky sounding, but that's the point. So the lesson in there is go for character over what other people consider good, and you might make better recordings. So with the shred video that I uploaded, there were a few questions, namely about like And this surprised me a lot because I was watching the video going, man, I can't believe how much I suck. But talking about how much I lift my fingers on my left hand and some tips for that. So we'll have a look at a few licks that you can practice in a second. But the other thing was talking about committing pieces to memory. And one of my favorite pieces to do is Moto Perpetuo, Paganini, or any of the Paganini caprices. But there's a Racer X song called YRO, and in the middle of it, Paul just kind of busts into this, Paganini, essentially like a little etude. And this is it played rather slow, and then I'm going to play 3 different legato licks that you can work on to basically improve your technique. The whole time you're doing the legato stuff, just think about trying to move your fingers the minimum amount, and when you're hammering onto a new string, keep your fingers on the string. So there we go. So there's a short answer to this question and there's a long answer to this question, and the short answer is just use whatever sounds good, but that means you'd have to go and try everything and compare it and obsess over it, which is not a short answer at all. So I'll get into the long answer. What I would recommend in most cases like that is try to go for a hybrid approach. So, if you have amplifiers that you already like, rather than committing to something like an aux, which is an all-in-one solution, it's going to have its limitations. Whereas if you commit to something like, the full-fledged Axe 3, which I'm using at the moment, I think sounds great. I actually haven't turned my amps on recently, except to sort of match them with the 3. And while it works great for me, it might not work great for you because you have to sort of be used to the modeling workflow. I think when you get into the modeling workflow, it's great. It makes life a lot easier. But let's say you want to keep your amps. What's the best way to go about building up a good direct recording solution? My advice would be get something like an AX8, which will give you the modeling options. It will give you all the great drives and effects and all the extra stuff that you want to chuck in front of your amps. But you can also pair that together with a load box. I've got the Fractal load box at the moment. You can get something like the Torpedo Captor, which is I think like $300 shipped in Australia, which is super cheap. And you can combine those two, so you could use the AX8 for like IR loading and effects, and you could use the Captor or the X-Load basically to load down your amps. And then that way you can commit to your guitar tracks whenever you're recording something. So rather than have to send like a load box and then load up a plugin with your impulse responses in the box and then have that option of like, oh, I've got a bazillion impulses, what one sounds best, and having that option paralysis. What you use is you sort of commit to a good sound, you get that dialed in, and then you do it the way you would do in a studio, like you've just mic'd an amp, you're kind of committing to your sound, and then you lay that down. So, and then if you want the option of not having to turn an amp on, you've got all the great models in the AX8 as well, which you would probably find if you're like me. Yeah, I'll have my amp set up and I'll have a load, and I just turn on the modeler most of the time, so that's easy enough. But yeah, a hybrid approach, if you can afford it, get something like an AX8 or get a smaller modeler, get a load box. That way you can use your amps, that way you can sort of still keep it a little bit old school and like commit your tones in your DAW. You can also split it with a direct out on the AX8, which is really easy and kind of a lifesaver as well for reamping. Otherwise, yeah, if you want to go whole hog, get an Axe 3. That way you've got USB audio, you've got the reamping facilities, you've got all the amazing amp models, you can do dual amp stuff, which I'm finding at the moment for recording is very, very useful and kind of like a next level thing over the AX8. Or if you get the AX8, you can blend it with your real amps as well and do a 2-amp thing that way. So yeah, lots of options. At the end of the day, whatever works best for you and whatever is going to get you the best tones, the easiest way, any of those approaches is going to do it. Another answer would just be whatever's cheapest, do that, and then stop worrying about it and get on with the process of making music. Okay, I don't want to say that your Fractal Axe-Fx 3 is going to sound exactly like your Digitech 2120 or your Lexicon Reverb, but those units are like 25, 30 years old. Maybe not that old. I know the Artist was around in like the late 80s, early 90s, so maybe we're getting there, but the point is that this stuff has moved forward so much, especially in the last 5 years, I think probably more than the previous 20 years. So yeah, it will probably replace that stuff. It's not going to sound exactly the same if that's what you want to do, but I think it will give you more options, and overall, I don't want to say it's going to sound better because that's very subjective, but it will give you way more options, the workflow is easier, and I think you're going to get overall a higher quality rig, whether you're recording direct with it or whether you're using it with like a power amp and a cab. So yeah, go away and have a listen to some more demos and have a listen to the amazing amp models and the reverbs and stuff like that. And yeah, if you can keep your old gear like that, I think, you know, especially the Digitech Artist, that's a kind of a cool, desirable piece of old rack gear now. So yeah, rather than replace it, maybe it can supplement it instead. Alright, what rack case was I using when I did that Axe-Fx 3 video? I've changed a few things around, so I'm building an in-ear monitor rig at the moment, and I've got the in-ear system in that rack. But I'll pull it out, because I cannot remember for the life of me what it is. Oh yeah, I'm trying not to knock the lights over. Okay, so it's here. I think it's, what is it, a 5 or a 6 space? I think it's a 5 space. Live Sound Road Case Company, Auckland, New Zealand, and this is a little bit heavy. So that's what the rack case is. Okay, so there's plenty of FRFR solutions out there like the CLR and the Mission Gemini and the Friedman ASM, but I think if you're just playing at home, spend that money on a good set of really nice studio monitors like the Atom A7Xs, for example, or the Atom A5s, or, you know, there's even the lower end stuff like the KRK stuff. I think for home playing, it's going to help you dial in tones which are going to translate across other situations. If you're not playing out, obviously you don't need the big FRFR anyway, so yeah, I would do that. The big advantage I find is that just listening to music through studio monitors is like the best experience ever. Everything sounds so much more detailed. You can kind of get that depth happening when you listen to a really good mix, and yeah, overall I think it will just improve your appreciation of music, and if you're recording as well, it's a real bonus. So, and it's easy to run stereo too, so yeah, I would probably invest money in studio monitors if you're playing at home before an FRFR. So this question seems to pop up from time to time, like how do I afford all this gear? And well, isn't it obvious? I sell crack to elderly women. So in all seriousness though, there was a lot of speculation about whether like all this stuff gets sent to me by companies that I endorse, or the one that really made me chuckle was maybe I pay for it all with royalties from my band. That is definitely not the case. Here's my most recent like royalty check. So yeah, not much at all. The reality is like, this is basically my hobby and my passion and my life, so it's kind of in my interest, you know, to have lots of gear, because I look at every guitar here as just kind of like a different tool, and the same as the amps, and the same as the Fractal stuff, and the same as like Pro Tools and all the plugins and the camera stuff. It's just stuff that helps me do what I need to do, whether it's doing a gig, or whether it's making content, or whether it's recording music that I'm passionate about. That's kind of just the end game. And you know, I don't drink alcohol at all, so I don't spend any money on that. I don't smoke, I don't take drugs. I do like to eat Nutella from the jar, so maybe that's an expense that I could do without. But yeah, everything just kind of leads into this, and I don't get paid to do any of these videos either. So, you know, if there's companies out there that want to pay me to pimp their stuff, I will do it. But I will put a disclaimer on the video if they're sponsored videos. So, That is something that I really believe in, because I don't want this to just become mindless shilling for anything. If I do a video about something and I'm excited about it, it's because I'm excited about it. I'm not trying to sell you guys something. And you know, if I start trying to sell you guys like multivitamins or something in the future, just unsubscribe. Because if you don't like the content, you do not have to consume it. And I really like Adam Neely's thing, like, this is not an airport, you do not have to announce your departure. So if you guys are digging the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit subscribe. If you just think I'm turning into a massive arrogant dickhead, then hit unsubscribe. I'll see you around. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching the video. It really does mean a lot to me. And to all the people who have actually gone out and bought my music, you guys are the best. Especially this guy, Dirk. Be more like Dirk. Support music that you love, and I will see you guys around next time. And it's this, the ultimate Bitcoin mining machine that mines Bitcoin 3 times faster with the ActiveX3.